Hello, and welcome back to Financial Triage, where we talk about financial planning and how it impacts your finances. We are going to cover a lot of information in each episode. As everyone is in a different place financially and has different values and goals, not all of this information will apply to you. You can download the slides using your camera app on the QR code, which we will show periodically during this broadcast. If you have questions, please note them in the chat at any time. We will answer all questions at the end. As we are going through these topics, if there is a particular segment, topic, or situation you would like to see a future seminar about, please leave it in the chat or message the organizers at academy@bedfordpresbyterian.org. My name is Jennifer Climo, and I have been providing income tax advice for over 30 years to individuals and couples, and I have been providing financial planning advice to individuals and couples for over 18 years. I am a certified public accountant, CPA, and a certified financial planner, CFP. The views expressed today are mine alone and are not the views of either Bedford Presbyterian Church or Milestone Financial Planning. Nothing you hear today should be considered investment advice. Do not make financial decisions based on this or any other seminar, but instead meet with a qualified financial advisor regarding your specific goals and financial circumstances. Note that almost all financial decisions will impact your income taxes or estate taxes now or in the future, and the tax consequences should be evaluated before you take action. Lastly, past performance of investments does not predict future results. Triage is the acronym we came up for this series of classes. Today's topic is the R in triage, retirement. At the end of today's class, I hope you will understand more about how to determine if you can afford to retire, how much you can withdraw from your portfolio each year, the types of income in retirement, what to do about health insurance in retirement, and how Social Security impacts your retirement. Retirement is a time when we are stepping away from the employment that got us to where we are and are switching gears to accomplish other goals. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Luke 14:28. One way or the other, you need to see if you have enough resources to retire. When we think of retirement, we don't often think of people who stop working in their 30s or 40s. You may have heard of the FIRE movement. The acronym stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. There are some people that are intent upon retiring by age 30, 35, 40, 45. These are mostly individuals with good incomes who, by living very frugally, can save and invest enough to quit their jobs early. It isn't that they don't want to do anything productive anymore. It is usually that they aren't happy with their current situation. Therefore, they focus on changing their situation by saving very large amounts of their income, 50% or more. This allows them to accumulate large sums of money at an early age, which gives them choices. Speaking of choices, in Proverbs 8:10, choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. Constant learning also gives you opportunity and choice to step out of your current situation if you are unhappy. The main point that our people that are part of the FIRE movement have learned is that your rate of savings is more important than your rate of return. I've talked about this before, and it is so critical. Also, the FI, financial independence piece of this movement, is the most critical. When you are financially secure, you have options that other people do not. If you find yourself stuck in a job you hate and you have savings, you can quit and do something else. You can easier flex with whatever circumstances life throws at you. The major weakness in the RE, retire early concept of FIRE, is uncertainty. You don't know what life is going to throw at you in terms of disability, death, divorce, economic crisis, pandemic, etc. And if you quit earlier than you have to, you may have shot yourself in the foot financially. A better option might be to position yourself into financial strength so you can quit the job you hate and do something else that you enjoy. Contentment is an important characteristic of people who are successful with money. That's because they think long and hard about the purchases they make and therefore have more money left over to save, invest, and give. The less you have to spend in retirement, the lower amount of money you will need in retirement. If you can reduce your lifestyle spending now, you may be able to retire sooner. How much can I withdraw from my portfolio? You may have heard of the 4% rule. Back in the 1980s, a financial advisor named Bill Bengen did a bunch of research and backtested it, determining that in a 50% stock, 50% bond portfolio, that if you took 4% per year of the starting portfolio as a distribution, and then increased that amount by inflation each year, you were not likely to run out of money at the end of 30 years. This is known as the, quote, safe withdrawal rate. But that doesn't mean it is always safe, because past performance does not predict future results. Backtesting is taking a certain investment strategy and applying past investment results to see how it holds up. The problem with backtesting any investment idea, as Bill Bengen identified, is that, again, past performance does not predict future results. Just because it's backtested doesn't mean it will work in the future. Additional protections, as he wrote about in later papers, are to refrain from increasing your distributions in down market years, limit the annual increase to what is needed versus what is mathematically calculated if you apply the inflation rate every single year, and or start with a more aggressive portfolio. In addition, note that the 4% is supposed to represent total distributions from the portfolio for the entire year. If you have a $100,000 portfolio and you're taking $4,000 a year, that's 4% of $100,000, or you have a $1 million portfolio and you're taking $40,000 per year, 4% of a $1 million portfolio, then you can't say, oops, I didn't plan for taxes on the $4,000, so I need another $1,000 to pay my taxes. Or $10,000 to pay your taxes on the $1 million portfolio on the $40,000 of distributions. Because what you have just done is taken 5% of your portfolio instead of 4%. So remember, the percentage you take out of your portfolio should be all in, including your taxes. What kinds of income might you have in retirement? There are many different possible income sources you might have in retirement. Investment distributions. Note, I'm not talking about dividends, but total return. Dividends, interest, and the growth of the portfolio. An investment distributions example. If you have a $100,000 brokerage account, let's say it generates $2,000 in dividends and grows by 5% for the year. The account balance is now $107,000. Using the rule of thumb 4%, you take $4,280 from the account. This is more than the income of $2,000, but still allows the account to grow, leaving $102,720 in the account after the first year's distribution. Note that future years' distributions equal the prior year amount increased by inflation, not 4% of the ending year balance. You don't take your portfolio balance times 4% every year. You take the beginning portfolio balance times 4%, and that's the number you take every year, increasing as your expenses rise or with inflation, always making sure it's not too large a percentage of your overall portfolio. What if the balance falls by 5% instead of growing by 5%? In example number 2, we have the same beginning balance of $100,000, the same dividends of $2,000, but the markets were volatile and the account balance falls by 5%, so your year-end total is $97,000. Your 4% distribution is only $3,880, and the year 2 beginning balance is $93,120. Since the next year's distribution is based on this year's amount, you end up taking out less than in the first scenario. Poor returns can impact you early on in retirement. In general, large losses in the stock market are followed by large gains in future years. This slide shows the S&P 500 total cumulative return from 1918 to 2018, 100 years. You will see the bear markets represented in red: the Great Depression, the 1970s, 2001, 2008, 2009, followed by large market movements up in the years that followed all of those years in the blue. Volatility, or stock market swings, works in both directions. The price you pay for higher long-term rates of return is that there is sometimes volatility to the downside. history shows us this negative volatility is temporary. And as long as you can avoid cashing out, you may be better off in the long run. Tiny little font at the bottom of this slide shows that past performance does not predict future performance, and you can't actually invest in an index without fees. Lastly, do not consider this investment advice. Just want to show you that in general, large downswings in the market are usually accompanied by very large, very lengthy upswings. This happened in just my career after 2001, after September 11th, then again in the financial crisis, after the lows of March 2009, everything took off, and again in 2020, which was a much shorter time period when everything tanked in March, it very rapidly regained shortly thereafter, and is still gaining. We will talk more about investments next week in next week's class, but the most dangerous 4 words in investing is "this time is different." This time is not different. Those of you over age 35, see if you remember any of these times. The internet will change the rules of investing. Y2K. Terrorist attacks have changed the rules of investing forever. 2001. The financial crisis has changed the rules of investing. 2009. The pandemic has changed everything, including the rules of investing. 2020. No. The rules of investing remain the same. Next week, we will discuss why stocks have value. There are mathematical models that influence stock prices, and these basic rules don't change because of current events. No matter the crisis, this time is not different. Stay the course. Successful investors know this and don't try to get in and out of the market based on current or expected events. Back to our withdrawal example number 2. If the $93,120 portfolio grows by 10% plus the 2% dividends, the year 2 ending balance is $100,298, and so on. As indicated in the prior slides, the volatility upwards is significant once a bear market ends. Back to retirement income sources, rental income. Another potential source of retirement income is rental income from owning a rental property after expenses. This can be taxed at ordinary income tax rates or at a lower tax rate, depending on how involved you are in the day-to-day operation of the rental. A concern with rental properties is that they can break and need additional investments for large repairs, just like your house. Other sources of retirement income: IRA and 401k distributions. These are taxable to you at ordinary income tax rates. If you are over age 59 and a half, there is no penalty. You have never paid taxes on this money. You earned it from your job, but stashed it in a savings account before the taxes were calculated on your remaining income. Therefore, it has not been taxed yet. An example of IRA distributions after age 72 is a required minimum distribution. We talked about this a little bit last week. Once you hit age 72, you must remove at least this amount from your accounts. You can certainly take more. An RMD, required minimum distribution, is a type of distribution from your IRA, 401k, etc., taxed at ordinary income tax rates. When you initially saved into your 401k, 403b, TSP, or IRA, you received the tax deduction and promised the IRS that you would later pay the taxes on this amount plus whatever it earned in the future. A required minimum distribution, or RMD, is the amount you're required to remove from your account and be taxed on. The RMD for your IRA is due by April 1st of the year following the year you turn age 72. After that, you must take distributions by December 31st each year. Because of this rule, we suggest you take your first RMD in the year you turn 72, so you don't have to take and be taxed on a double RMD the following year, because that can push you into another tax bracket. You calculate the RMD using the prior December 31st ending balance of your account divided by a number from an IRS life expectancy table. Many people don't realize that they don't have to take the money out of their account. We often transfer a client's RMD from their IRA to their brokerage account. You don't have to spend it. You do need to factor the income into your tax planning and make sure you are withholding or otherwise paying in enough in taxes. But you can certainly keep the net amount invested. You can also combine all your IRA RMDs and take from just one of your IRA accounts. 401k and 403b RMDs have to be taken from those accounts separately. Taxable brokerage account distributions. This is what is left over after you earned from your job, then deducted your taxes, then spent some of the money. What was left, you saved in your taxable brokerage account. It's already been taxed. The earnings on this money are taxable at either ordinary tax rates if it's interest, or lower tax rates if it's dividends or capital gains. This is to encourage you to invest the money versus leave it sitting in the bank. Because distributions from this account include part of your original investment and some earnings, only some of this is taxable to you, and it is mostly taxed at lower tax rates. Therefore, distributions from taxable investments / brokerage accounts are only partially taxable. It's a good way to keep your income low in retirement by taking some distributions out of your taxable brokerage accounts if you have one. Roth IRA distributions. Roth IRAs grow tax-free. You don't get a tax deduction for putting money in them. They are mostly or all tax-free when you take it out if you meet certain qualifications. Your account has to be open for over 5 years, and you're over age 59 and a half. Annuities. You give a lump sum dollar amount to an insurance company who promises you a stream of monthly income in the future that can last for some time period, often your life, but it can also be a term of years, 10 years, 20 years, some term of years. Pensions and Social Security are both examples of annuities. I'm going to go through an example of an annuity. You give the insurance company $500,000 and they give you $1,500 for the rest of your life. The amount of the payment, the $1,500, is determined by the interest rates in effect at the time that you purchase the annuity. The payment is generally fixed and doesn't change for your entire life, no matter how long you live. It also never ends, but the $500,000 is gone. An annuity can be immediate. You give the insurance company a lump sum in exchange for monthly payments now. That's called annuitization. Or deferred. You give the insurance company a lump sum, the $500,000, and they hold it in a tax-deferred account that earns some kind of interest. Note that since an annuity already receives tax-deferred treatment, you don't have to pay taxes on the earnings every year, you probably don't want to own one in your IRA if the only reason you're buying it is for tax deferral. Your IRA is already protected and tax-deferred. An annuity is outside the IRA with taxable brokerage money. It's a way for that to grow tax-deferred as well. IRA withdrawals before age 59 and a half are subject to the 10% tax penalty. The insurance company usually has, not always, usually a 7 to 15-year surrender charge, meaning that you can't cash out of the annuity if you decide you didn't like it or didn't want to be in it. Distributions from the account balance, the $500,000 in this case, before you annuitize it. If you decide you want to take out $10,000 or something like that, then those are taxed as ordinary income first and principal last, unless they're in an IRA, in which case it's all ordinary income. The goal of an annuity is to eventually annuitize it, turn it into the income stream. But that is giving up the account balance in exchange for a monthly stream of payments for some time period. Once you turn it into the stream of payments, unless you purchase life insurance as part of the annuity, the account balance disappears when you die, leaving nothing to heirs. If you did buy the life insurance component, the fees for the annuity are probably very high compared to other investments. Every different feature of the annuity adds another layer of fees to the product, which reduces returns. My preference is to invest the assets and buy life insurance if you need the insurance. It's much cheaper. There is no guarantee a specific portfolio of investments will grow and exceed the payments of the annuity, however. That's how annuities are sold, because they can use the word guarantee, and anyone doing investments cannot. Annuities are used to accumulate your savings tax deferred. However, if you're in a low tax rate, that's not usually the best strategy. You want to use your Roth or your 401k if you're in a low tax rate. If you're not maximizing your 401k, 403b, TSP, and your Roth IRA, you should generally do that before you contribute to an annuity. Annuities can be appropriate in certain situations, but I've seen them be oversold by playing on individuals' lack of understanding about the stock market. In addition, oftentimes, but not always, an annuity sale results in a large commission for the salesperson, which then results in a long period of time where you cannot get out of the investment. That's where the 7 to 15-year surrender penalty usually comes into play. Annuity payments are subject to ordinary income tax rates. Their chief advantage is for high-income people who already have maxed out their 401k and Roth IRA contributions. It gives them additional tax-deferred savings opportunity. Fixed versus variable. You may have heard of fixed annuities versus variable annuities. A fixed annuity receives a fixed interest rate every year as it grows in the account balance before it's annuitized. And then the payment is static, a straight line, the $1,500 a month in my example, for forever, for 30 years, 40 years, however long you live. Variable annuities, the account is invested in stocks and bonds, and they can grow at higher rates. Those also tend to have higher fees on an annual basis than a fixed annuity. Uses of annuities. As we talked about, if you need more tax deferral than your 401k or IRA, a guaranteed income stream, even if that income stream never increases, it is guaranteed for a period of time, oftentimes your life. They can be useful for people who don't like the volatility of the stock market and would prefer a guaranteed income stream, but you'd want to make sure they understand what they are giving up to get that. In most cases, the highest wealth will be built by investing the assets, not buying an annuity. And I would caution you, if you're going to buy an annuity, make sure you read the contract and understand the provisions. Hypothetical example. This is back in 2009 when interest rates were higher. Shows the annuity payment on your hypothetical $500,000 might have been, back at that time, if you got an immediate annuity, you might be able to get $2,500 a month. Now, if you go back to our 4% rule, 500,000, we know we don't want to take out more than 4% of our investment portfolio, so we're looking at $1,666 a month. That's lower than $2,500. Annuity comes out ahead. It's great. There is a period of time where that makes sense, and then there's an age as the years go by and your investment distributions keep going up because your portfolio balance keeps growing because it is properly diversified and has an appropriate allocation to stocks versus bonds, that the investment portfolio distribution is greater than the original this $2,500 a month that the annuity is providing steady Eddie every single month. And at the end of many, many years, you die, there is no balance in your annuity. Nothing goes to the heirs. In this case, we didn't buy the life insurance component. If you have your investment portfolio, the whole ending balance goes to the heirs. This is why I was saying that in general, you will have greater wealth with an investment portfolio than you will with an annuity, but it is a trade-off because obviously there is risk with an investment portfolio and there is potentially a lot less risk with a guaranteed annuity. Pluses and minuses. Now today, if you look at getting an annuity, interest rates are much, much lower. And I did actually recently look at annuity rates for somebody. And on the same $500,000 portfolio, we could get about $1,500 a month. When we know the investment portfolio can provide them approximately $1,666 a month, increasing each year over time. Now, yes, there are some years in down markets that we might suggest to clients, you know what, don't take that inflation increase this year because, pandemic, we're in a pandemic. And, that's just a smart thing to do. Whereas the annuity is guaranteed, $1,500 a month, forever. But over time, the investment portfolio usually does win out, especially in interest rates are pretty low today. Pensions. A pension is a kind of an annuity. Pensions are a stream of income for a certain period of time, almost always your life. They generally don't increase over time, which is one of their greatest limitations. Most private pensions have been frozen. Most existing pensions are from governments. Pension payments are taxable at ordinary income tax rates. Pensions are great because they are guaranteed income, and they are terrible because other than Social Security, they usually don't increase, as does the cost of living. Some government pensions are great because they come with a health insurance subsidy for life for you and your spouse. One example of this is the Massachusetts Teacher Association. Mass teachers get great pensions, not for the money, but really for the health benefits. There is also, in a pension, no lump sum from you to draw from or to leave your heirs, although there can be some kind of continuance payments for a spouse if you choose that option when you start collecting the pension, in exchange for a lower current payment for you. Social Security is another form of an annuity, but it is inflation adjusted. This is a great benefit as it tries to keep up with inflation. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Private pensions can sometimes be rolled out to your IRA. A lot of companies, private companies, are sending letters out saying, hey, if you want to take this as a lump sum, we'll give you X dollars, or you can take the Y dollars a month, just like our annuity example. Why would you want to do this? Because interest rates are so low that you can likely create a larger stream of income over time by investing the money in stocks without running out of principal or paying extra life insurance premiums to leave your money to your heirs. Remember, a pension is a stream of income tied to your life or you and your spouse's life. If you both die early, any balance is forfeited. There is often a period of time where the pension may result in the higher payment, but it crosses over with the higher investment returns at some point if you live long enough. Also, the fact that the balance in your investment account can pass to your heirs versus an annuity, where the balance is usually lost unless you buy the life insurance feature, means the investment account is often the better choice if you are trying to maximize your net worth. To evaluate the pension versus investment opportunity, your advisor should run a calculation of net present value to see if that is right for you. Once you claim your pension or annuitize your annuity, you cannot make changes. Those options are irreversible. If you are afraid you barely have enough to retire, and you get hit with large, poor returns early in retirement, this can hurt you. The best way to protect against this is to oversave and to diversify your investments, but that has to be done well before you retire. If you find yourself in this situation at retirement, you can mitigate the situation by working part-time, spending less, and keeping distributions to a minimum. Not really ideal choices. Any reduction in distributions is better than none. Note that if you have more than enough to retire, it doesn't matter if your beginning retirement returns are poor, as you're taking such a small percentage to be insignificant. Practically speaking, people calculate their needed distribution based on their spending, not a withdrawal rate. There's no need to make complicated calculations. Just stay within the guidelines and don't take too much as a percentage of your portfolio, and make sure you've factored in income taxes. What is asset allocation? Asset allocation is the percentage of your portfolio invested in stocks versus bonds and cash. When we say 80-20 or 60-40, we're talking about the percentage of your assets invested in stocks versus fixed income, bonds, cash. Your asset allocation impacts your withdrawal rate. Generally, the more you have in a diversified stock portfolio spread over US and international stocks, large companies and small companies, growth versus value, the larger your withdrawal rate can be. That assumes a properly diversified portfolio with relatively low fees. Such a portfolio will still have 20 to 30% in bonds and cash for the diversification benefits and the lack of fluctuation during times of high volatility. A conservative portfolio, such as a 60-40 stock-bond ratio or less, will likely result in lower long-term rates of return than a 70-30 or an 80-20 portfolio. Historically, this is true. It is a myth that the percentage of your portfolio allocated to stocks should decrease the older you get. Your asset allocation is dependent on your goals, your ability to stomach swings in the markets, and the amount you need to withdraw, not your age. In real life, people tell me how much they need to spend, and I determine if their portfolio can sustain that amount of distributions. The factors I look at are the percentage of stocks they owned, how long before they need to draw on the money, what percentage of the portfolio do they need to draw each year, their desire to leave a legacy to their heirs, and their level of frugality. My retired clients who inherited stocks from their parents late in life, my clients in their 60s and their parents are in their 90s, and their parents own stocks all their life, they tend to be the ones with the best understanding of this concept. If they don't need large withdrawals in retirement as a percentage of their portfolio, they leave their investments aggressively invested at 80% stocks because they want to continue to build the legacy to pass down to future generations that their parents passed down to them. Of course, if you do need 4 to 5% of the portfolio balance annually to pay for your expenses, you need a somewhat more conservative portfolio to protect against swings down in the market. Note that these swings have historically always been temporary on the permanent upward march of stock prices. If you want to invest like the rich, invest the assets you don't need to spend in a tax-diversified, asset-diversified portfolio that is mostly stocks. Again, I have to say, past performance does not predict future results. You guys are going to get tired of that. I'm sorry. Missed a few slides. Okay, you may remember this slide from our discussion last week on taxes. From age 59 and a half to 72, there are dates that are important to your financial planning. I want to point out that the year you turn 63 is a very important year, as that year's taxes will be used to determine your Part B and Part D Medicare premiums at age 65. We talked about this a lot last week. Age 70 is the last year to collect Social Security and have the benefit rise because you waited. Age 72 is when you must start withdrawals and being taxed on IRAs, 401ks, TSPs, 403bs, and other qualified retirement plans. Age 72, as discussed, was the required minimum distributions start. When should you collect Social Security? The date you collect Social Security has nothing to do with when you retire. You can make them the same date, but there is no requirement to do so, and it can often make sense to delay collecting Social Security for several years after you retire. You are first eligible to collect Social Security at age 62, unless you're a widower or widower. You may be able to collect at 60 in that case. Every year you wait, your benefit increases by about 8% per year that you wait. I don't think you can buy that kind of annuity that increases that much. By deferring the collection of Social Security until age 70, you've given yourself an extra 8% in benefits for every year you waited past age 62. And if you're married and your benefit is higher than your spouse's, you have locked in that amount for your spouse's Social Security if you die first. It's like extra life insurance. Before we get into an example, it's important you understand the concept of full retirement age. What is full retirement age? Age 66 in a few months if you're born between 1955 and 1960, and age 67 if you're born in 1960 or later. If you're in good health and expect to live well into your 80s, it may make sense to wait until age 70 to collect because of the much larger benefit you will receive. If you are still working and earning more than $18,000 a year, you should not collect Social Security until after your full retirement age, or they will claw it back at the end of the year. An example of how Social Security might work is Jane and Jim Doe. Jane earns $200,000. She has a great job. Jim doesn't work. He stayed home and took care of the kids. Jane is born after 1960, and her full retirement age is age 67. Her FRA, which is full retirement age, her FRA benefit is $3,000 per month. That's her age 67 benefit. However, she waits until age 70 to collect, and her benefit therefore increases to $3,780, which is the 3,000 times 8% times 8% times 8%. Jim collects at the same time, but his benefit, while his wife is alive, is based on her FRA, her full retirement age benefit of $3,000. He gets to collect half of that. Non-working spouses get to collect you can either collect on your own record or you can collect half of your spouse's FRA benefit. If Jane dies, Jim's benefit rises to what she was collecting, which was $3,780. That's the extra life insurance by waiting till age 70. By deferring Social Security, You've also given yourself a few years of room for tax strategies in between the year you retire and your income falls and when you collect. These are the years to be making partial Roth conversions at a relatively low tax cost, as long as it is before 2032, when Roth conversions may go away for people earning more than 400,000 single, 450,000 married filing joint. That's not yet law, but proposed. You can go back and listen to our taxes episode of Triage from last week. Hear all about that. Of course, if you die young, say in your early 70s, this strategy probably wasn't the best. So your health and life expectancy does factor into this decision. If you tell me when you're going to die, I can tell you when to collect Social Security with a lot less uncertainty. For most people, age 62 is the earliest you can collect. Most people do collect at this age due to misinformation or cash flow needs. As mentioned above, if you collect Social Security before your full retirement age, then it may be clawed back if you earn more than about $18,000 a year working. There are thousands of different Social Security claiming strategies. Another example of one is if you have minor children. You would have to probably be a second marriage or have had children really late in life to be over age 67 and have minor children. But you should probably collect at full retirement age in that situation, because your children can also collect if you have minor children. And this income is not taxed at all because it's payable to the kids who don't work, they don't have other income, unless they have substantially other income. By the time you're age 70, if you waited till age 70, they may have aged out of collection because they have to be minor children, 18 or under, for you to be able to collect on them, for them. Can I afford to retire? Well, what are your expenses? Let's assume you're age 67 with a very generous 401k of $1.5 million. For the sake of discussion, we'll use the 4% rule for this calculation. 4% of $1.5 million is $60,000. Say you spend $10,000 on real estate taxes, $9,000 in mortgage interest, and $10,000 in charity. Your mortgage payment, including escrows, is $2,500 a month. You start collecting Social Security of $3,000 a month, and your spouse collects half, or $1,500, because they were non-working. You pay $13,000 in income taxes. That's based on this entire scenario. You don't pay FICA or Medicare taxes because you've stopped working. Your net income is $60,000 from your 401k, $54,000 from the $4,500 a month in Social Security between you and your spouse, less $13,000 in income taxes, is $101,000 per year, or $8,400 per month. Your expenses are similar to what they were when you were working, except you're no longer saving, and you're paying an additional $1,200 a month for health insurance and medical costs. Therefore, your total expenses are about $9,700 a month. You're short $1,300 a month. Either you need to cut spending by that amount, take 5% of your portfolio instead of 4%, or earn $15,000 a year from some kind of part-time job. Note that if you take more from your 401k, your taxes are going to go up, so that isn't a great solution. Alternatively, you can plan your savings during your working years so your mortgage is paid off, which will save about $1,500 a month in this example. You'll still have to pay the real estate taxes and insurance part of the payment. Also, that requires adjustments in spending during your working years. There are trade-offs. Second example, alternative example, same $1.5 million. This is called the tax diversified plan. You have a 401k of $1 million and a Roth IRA of $500,000. If you remember, Roths grow tax-free and the distributions come out tax-free in retirement. Using the 4% rule, that gives you $40,000 of 401k distributions plus $20,000 of Roth IRA distributions. It's the same $60,000 in cash off your portfolio. But 1/3 of it is tax-free. Instead of $13,000 in income taxes, you only pay $5,000. You now have $9,000 a month of income instead of $8,400. Your monthly cash deficit is now $700 instead of $1,300. Your choices to fix this are the same as in the prior example. The reason the taxes go down by so much is because less of your Social Security is taxable. Covered this a little bit last week. But the lower your income, the less Social Security is taxable. And then the higher your other income, there's a level where up to 85% of your Social Security becomes taxable. Third example, I have, skipped it. I have $2 million in assets. Can I retire? This is entirely dependent upon how much you need to withdraw from the portfolio each year to pay for your expenses, including income taxes. Rough rule of thumb, easy math in your head, use 5%. I know it's not the 4% rule, but it's easier math. 5% of $2 million is $100,000, which must include income taxes. So you will need a tax projection on all of your income to see how much your taxes will be. This also assumes an appropriate asset allocation, which we will discuss next week in investments. If you have 50% of your money in fixed income, don't expect to be able to take 5% of your assets out in retirement and not run out of money. This is just a guideline because I am now going to tell you it's dangerous to use rules of thumb. Withdrawal strategies. Use a tax-efficient plan for withdrawal. Again, you need to prepare a tax projection for each year to determine the impact of your withdrawals using your current income and tax laws in effect at the time. Relying on any kind of rule of thumb can be detrimental to your finances. A low tax bracket is a terrible thing to waste. You should be making partial Roth conversions when you have low income years, depending on your situation. We often take distributions from the taxable brokerage accounts, if there are assets there, first in retirement. We try to spread the IRA income over time to spread the tax impact. However, if all you have is an IRA from your 401k, you have no Roth, no taxable, your choices are limited, and as we talked about last week, you're sitting on a giant income tax bomb. You will spend your working life stuffing money into tax-deferred accounts and your 60s and beyond trying to get money out of your tax-deferred accounts in a tax-efficient manner. It is important to pay attention to your tax bracket when deciding which account to contribute to, tax-deferred or Roth. Many people start out in a low tax bracket in their 20s, and by the time they retire, they are in a much higher tax bracket because their income has risen over the years as they move through their career. You don't need a tax deduction of 12% when you're 21 to have the money come back out when you're in your 60s in the 24% or higher tax bracket. That just doesn't make sense. That's why we tell folks that are in low tax brackets, especially young folks, start contributing to your Roth 403b and your Roth IRA when you're young while you can. Save and invest your HSAs to cover your medical costs in retirement. We talked about HSAs last week. Switch to tax-deferred accounts when your tax bracket is high. Currently, I mean, this depends on tax rates, but right now, if your tax bracket is above about 30%, then it might make sense to contribute to a tax-deferred 401k or IRA. Save, save, save. Remember, your rate of savings is more important than your rate of return. Side note, you don't have to save only in a tax-deferred or tax-free account like a 401k or a Roth IRA. You can also save in a brokerage account. It is advantageous to have choices in retirement. I would now caution people not to save too much in qualified IRA, 401k, Roth IRA accounts, because if they surpass $10 million, combined in all your retirement accounts, as we discussed last week, you may be forced into taking large distributions in future years. Although that law hasn't passed just yet, that's what's being talked about. $10 million sounds like a lot of money, but inflation. That may be how we get out of this spending all this money, is with inflation. And if inflation keeps going up, I don't know if you remember the 70s, but things that seemed cheap then got really expensive really quick and stayed that way. What can you do about health insurance in retirement? If you are under age 65 and not eligible for Medicare but retired, then you're looking at buying a health insurance plan through the exchange. There is now an even greater incentive to keep your income low during these years, so you qualify for a health care subsidy, which is now limited to 8.5% of your household income for people with incomes above 400% of the poverty level. Health insurance as a percentage of your income limits are lower for incomes lower than that level. The subsidy cliff was temporarily eliminated in past legislation, and this is made permanent in the proposed new tax law that has not yet passed yet. The subsidy cliff basically was if you might have a $12,000 health insurance subsidy, but if your income was $1 over these limits, you lost all $12,000. Cliff. even with an HSA eligible high deductible plan, you're looking at paying $500 a month per person if you're in your 40s for health insurance, gradually increasing into $1,000 per month per person if you're in your 60s for health insurance, if you're under age 65 and you don't qualify for a health subsidy. If your income is low enough, you can receive a subsidy for your health insurance, which is paid in the form of a tax credit. They used to reconcile the tax credit on your tax return, the amount you actually should have gotten based on your income. And the problem is most people don't know how to estimate their income correctly because of how the tax code works. So they were getting hit on their tax return with large repayment amounts. That's why they passed this new legislation to fix that. So now you don't need to repay if you overestimated your subsidy, except for instances of fraud or purposely understating your income. Medicare. Medicare is applicable to people over age 65 that paid in a certain amount of Medicare taxes during their working years. There's a lot of alphabet soup here. Be patient. Part A, there's parts and there's plans. Part A is hospital insurance and is free. Part B is medical insurance. Those premiums are currently paid to the government. They're about $150 per month per person, and they're dependent upon your income. The base level is $150, and we talked about last week, and there was a slide on if your income gets above certain levels, then the premium goes up. Part D premiums are for prescriptions. Notice we skipped Part C. These are also income dependent. You also need to purchase, you have Medicare, your $150 a month or whatever your premium is based on your income. Then you pay a little bit for Part D for the prescription coverage, and then you need a Medicare supplement plan to cover what Medicare does not cover. These are plans, not parts, but they're also alphabet. So Medicare generally does not cover vision, dental, hearing aids, or glasses. If you're over age 60, you should plan for combined health insurance premiums of about $400 a month. That includes the $150, plus medical expenses of another $250 a month per person, more if you're subject to the higher Medicare premiums because of your income. Those are known as IRMAA, I don't know, and are the extra tax on high income that we discussed last week. So whatever happened to Part C? Part A is the hospital insurance, Part B is medical insurance, Part D is prescriptions. Part C is an HMO plan that covers A, B, and D all in one plan. It's usually very cheap, but it has downsides, the same downsides as there are with any HMO. It's extremely limited coverage. But it can be very inexpensive. We'll talk more about HMOs in our presentation on asset protection in a couple of weeks, which covers different types of insurance. Your choices for a Medicare supplement plan are the HMO, known as Part C coverage, or the choice of an alphabet soup of plans ranging from A to N. Not to be confused with parts, Part A, B, C, and D of Medicare. The plans, Plan F, used to be the most comprehensive and also the most expensive, but it has been phased out for new Medicare recipients, and it's getting more expensive every year for the people that are still on it because they base premiums based on usage. Plan G is now the most comprehensive. Compared to Plan F, Plan G just doesn't pay the $203 per year Medicare deductible. In the scheme of health insurance, that's a fairly small dollar amount, so we're recommending Plan G at the current time for Medicare supplements. Sneak peek. Next week, join us to discuss investments, including types of investments, diversification, rebalancing, and yes, Bitcoin. Retirement summary. I've had a lot of clients retire successfully in the past 2 years due to spending many years saving diligently, being appropriately invested, and planning to stay within the guidelines for withdrawal percentages. I have had other clients retire and plan on taking too much out of their portfolio early in retirement. Where this can sustain itself for some years, their chance of running out of money in their lifetime is much higher than others. The calculation of whether or not you can retire can get very complicated based on expected inflation rates, rates of return, risk tolerance, asset allocation, expected spending today and in the future, which changes, one-time expenses, tax rates and how they affect you, when to collect Social Security, etc. qualified financial advisor should be able to run all these calculations through interactive software to give you some answers. What I would like to do, if anyone is interested, is take some hypothetical retirement examples. Does anyone want to give me details for a hypothetical retiring individual or couple, or ask any other questions about retirement?
Say it one more time. What was the question?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So,
Microphone, please.
testing. All right. So my question is, if I recently went back to school and got a degree, graduated in December, and so I'll be switching careers to a cybersecurity. I am 52. Is it even worth starting a retirement account at that age?
Yes? Yes.
Great. All right.
Save, save, save. So it depends on your tax bracket whether you should start, well, it depends on if you're going to be self-employed or have a job.
I'll have a job, hopefully.
So if you have a job, hopefully they will offer a 401k. If they offer a 401k, hopefully they will have either a Roth 401k or a regular 401k. Really depends on what other accounts you have, but it's never too late to save. Never too late to save. You are still very young, especially if you're going to be working till 65 or later, and depending on assets, I mean, you have to have resources to retire. Pretty much nobody can live just on Social Security. So definitely save, save, save. But it's a complicated question where you should save, because it depends on your specific situation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions, you can put them into the chat, either of the chat on YouTube or on Facebook. Okay. Well, thank you very much.